Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, for checking out the series. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I am so excited because I've got a great one here. Deryck Whibley, Sum 41. They are back with a new record. Double album, Heaven and Hell, and he's got a book, Walking Disaster. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm great, man. You've got a lot going on here, as I'm just saying. Sum 41, they've announced the final album, Heaven and
Yep.
Hell, the double album. It's out now, pop punk and the heavier stuff. But you've also got this memoir that you've been working on that's going to be coming out in October. What's it? I don't know, man. What is it? A psychological, like, is it anything like to go back through all of this at this moment all at once? Does that do something to you?
I mean, not necessarily. For me, I've always had a really good memory, and I think it runs in my family too. So writing the book and like having all these memories of our whole career and everything, it wasn't like such a deep dive to go back and do all this stuff. And so writing the book was actually kind of easy once I got going. But the timing of it all sort of just happened by accident. That it was because when I signed on to do a book and when we started making a record, none of this like, final tour, final album was in our thoughts. It was just making an album and writing a book. And once it all kind of came together, it also the timing just kind of felt right for me personally, creatively, that it was kind of the end of Sum 41 for me.
It's not surprising. I mean, not that I think you guys ever had to dump it and run or anything like that, but just to think about what it takes to keep a band together. I mean, you have
Mhm.
multiple people that end up having their own. You start as the gang, right? That's where it starts. You're the
Yeah.
gang, and
Yep.
everything is about that. And then people get married, and people have kids, and people move away from each other. And and
Totally.
and how important is it? Has it been for you all to need that gang mentality?
Well, yeah, you do lose that eventually. It's just inevitable, right? Life changes and everybody goes out and gets their own lives and has different priorities in life. And you start out and you just all want the same thing. You're only friends and that's it. And you have the same goals. And then you get to a certain age where you have different goals, different priorities, and different family members, and then kids appear and all this kind of stuff. So it can be very difficult to keep it together. I think we had some problems in the past with keeping it together, and then also you throw in, a lot of partying and not sleeping and booze and all the other stuff that makes life fun for to a certain degree, but difficult to another degree. Um, and things start to implode, and we went through all of that. But then we came out of the other side of that really close and really great friends, and the family bond and the gang of us was tighter and stronger than ever, and it's been like that for the past decade. And it only gets stronger and stronger as we get older because we've sort of managed to figure out how it works for all of us. And I think the fact that we all did grow up together and went to high school together for the most part, I mean, obviously we have 2 other members who have joined in over the past decade or more. But we just have that closeness. And I think the thing is we always had the same goal again. Now, when it came to calling it quits, that was really more my thing. I think it would just felt for me creatively, and it really was just about creativity. It wasn't about we can't get along or we have different priorities like I said, everything is the best it's ever been. I just felt I've kind of said all I wanted to say within Sum 41, and that it's probably time for me to try to explore something different, and leave the band in a place that is like at the best it's ever been.
I mean, you really have made one of the best albums of your career,
Oh,
which is
thanks.
incredible. Like anybody that, like, how few people, how few artists are able to say that 20 plus years in. Like, it doesn't happen.
I guess so. I mean, Tom Petty made Wildflowers when he was my age at 44 or 42 to 44, which is when I was writing these songs. So, I mean, to me, that's my favorite Tom Petty record. But I don't know. I mean, there's probably a few
Well, there's a few,
but
right? Like you too, like we're talking about those. Like Dylan, maybe, 20, but it's like it's such a short list. Like it is incredible. I'm just throwing the congratulations at you, you know? Yeah, that's
cool. Well, thank you. Thank
um
you.
So when you're making the record, though, as you were saying, and just so I got my own timeline, at was the record done and then you knew that you were hanging it up, or did that happen during the like? Is there any like moment in the record where you hear that?
I think you can hear it in the record only because a decision like this takes a long time to unfold before you finally say, okay, I'm gonna go with this decision. I would say I was having these thoughts as far back as say 2019, pre-pandemic. And then the lockdown started, and I thought, okay, maybe I just need a break. We had like a year and a half, 2 years off, or whatever that was, just at home. And I thought when we started back up, all those feelings would be gone, but they were still there. And I was writing all that music through that lockdown period and not thinking that it was going to be the last record, knowing that I felt like, man, I've been in this band a long time and I don't know if I have much to say anymore. I found ways to get inspired, and other things inspired me that I didn't know that were going to inspire me, like having a child, like my son. He became obsessed, or he would chill out. He would stop crying when punk rock music was on. So I started listening to just like old school, like my old high school punk rock, which is like NoFX and Pennywise and Lagwagon, Strung Out, and like Epitaph, Fat Records bands. And I fell in love with that music that I loved in high school, which is what I was listening to when I wrote the first couple records of Sum 41. And I found that that was inspiring me again, the same way it did when I was a late teen, writing those early songs. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the new song sort of had that same sort of spirit, same vibe, same kind of thing. Except we're just better musicians now. So we were able to like articulate those ideas a little bit better, I think, to a certain degree, in certain ways. But um, yeah, it's just a few different things, I guess, just inspired me to write that record. And then when it was finished, I listened to it and I thought, this is the record I've always wanted to make. This is the sound of Sum 41. Like it feels like if it was a painting, like it's complete now. Like this, the art is the work is done.
Yeah, and then I'm guessing, and I'm assuming, by the way, um, when you go back, and especially now that you've written the book too, do you
Mhm.
find the moments of overlap there? Because when I listen to these songs, now that I know a few of the stories from the book, and the book's not out, I don't have the advance of it. I've been hearing you telling these other stories that did, like you have so many stories that you have an entire series now of stories that didn't make the book, which is crazy. But like when I hear Stranger in These Times, and then you tell that story of CBGBs and the anxiety attacks,
Mhm.
like are those connected?
Well, I think everything is. I've always, for the longest time, there's two ways I've written lyrics. And for the first four albums, I would just write words. Whatever came out, came out. And then by the Underclass Hero record and Scream Bloody Murder, I would sit and think of a topic before I wrote, and I would stick within that topic and just really try to write a song about whatever it is I'm trying to talk about. And then on this record, on Heaven and Hell, I just went back to the early way of writing lyrics. I'm just going to let whatever comes out comes out. So obviously all that stuff comes somewhere from the subconscious. It's all about me. It's all about my life. It's just I'm not necessarily thinking of something. I'm not going to say I'm going to write about anxiety on this song. But if that's what's in rattling around in my brain, that it'll just kind of come out.
Yeah. There are other big moments on here too. I mean, I'm looking at the track list right now. You've talked about this. You Wanted War. It's nuts. That
Yeah,
song
yeah.
is nuts.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was a fun one.
yeah. Have you played that live yet? Have you ever played
No,
that?
we've never played live. I mean, we played it in rehearsal. Like we've jammed on it, but we've never actually played it for people ever.
Is it coming?
I don't know. I mean, we have so many songs to play. It's a blessing and a curse, in a way. Like, this final tour is great because it's selling a lot of tickets and we're getting to say goodbye to our fans, but also at the same time we have to play so many songs, and we also have a brand new record, so it's like we can't play a lot of new songs because we got to say goodbye to people and play a lot of the old ones, so it's tough to put
Yeah.
out a record and a final tour at the same time.
Because I don't know. Like, I'm such the kind of person that says, well, if this is going to be the last tour, I have to play every song that we've ever written, which is, an insane thing to try to pull off.
Yeah, I think NoFX is doing that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're going to do something like that. But I don't know. For me, I don't want to play every single song that we've ever written. Some of them are just meant to be listened to on a record in the mix of everything else, and some of them are just are fun live.
Right.
Especially when you're playing to a lot of people, you can't really just play, track number 9 from like the fourth album that nobody's gonna know or really remember. When you get all those people there, it's like you could see that energy just like collapse all of a sudden when, 10,000 people don't know a song. That's a really bad feeling on stage. You're like, how long
But
is this song?
yeah, but the two front row people do. That's
Yeah.
they're there for you. You get that second record too, and again, so the first album, first side or whatever, pop punk, as you said, the second record is much heavier. Accessing that energy and that anger sometimes. How's that changed for you? Because does that come from a different place than it would have 20 years ago?
I don't think so. I think when I go into the studio and I start working on stuff, it's just I'm that same person that's always done it from the very beginning. It's just like something else comes over me, my brain goes into a different kind of thing. I don't know. It's just you just kind of become a different person. The same way as that when I go on stage, I'm much different than I am off stage. It's just especially when you've been doing it this long, you just kind of fall into those roles pretty quickly.
Yeah. Johnny Libertine, I wanted to bring up too, just for the general ask. I would love to hear anything about it. Right now, that's my favorite. That's my favorite one of
Oh,
them.
cool. That's actually an older song. It got reworked. Some of these ideas have been kicking around for a little while. They just never got finished. That one has been around since I'm gonna say 2006.
Wow.
That never really got finished. And that song, I mean, Johnny Libertine. So there was a guy in Sum 41. His name was John Marshall. He was the very first singer of the band. We started the band with John Marshall, and we both used to sing equally. And he was somebody I actually looked up to. He was much more developed. His voice was great. I mean, he was a punk rock guy, but he was just like more punk than everybody. He was a great songwriter. He's better than I could write at the time, and he was a better singer than me. And so he was always he's a little bit older than me. So I always felt like he's just like that. He just had that edge. And then he left the band, we're like 17, and but that's the song to me is like Johnny Libertine is John Marshall. He just seemed he was just so he was just this punk rock. He was just so, I don't know, this different kind of guy. And if you listen to those lyrics, I mean, that kind of describes who he is. He just didn't give a shit about anything. He was just destined for like, uh, I mean, have you ever seen the movie SLC Punk?
Yeah, we're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of like what if high school kind of felt like. That was like our town, except SLC is much better than where we grew up. But it was that kind of thing. And he reminded me of kind of like that Matthew Lillard character in a way.
Yeah. That's a cool. See, now if you played that one live, I would be one of the two people up there that would be cheering along to that whole thing. So that's just
Yeah, I mean that I thought about that song the other day actually, that could probably work live because it's so fast. A
mhm.
lot of times you can get away with those fast ones, even if people don't know it, because it's just there's a lot of energy.
Just that, yeah, right. It's all about that emotion. What when you all did that switch, because it wasn't like a light switch, but going from that early sounds to the heavier sound, what was the driving force that pushed you guys there? Because when it hit, it felt like it really took roots.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things that we always had this metal influence from the very beginning, and we put it into songs right from the very first EP that we ever put out. The very first track on our first EP is "Grab the Devil by the Horns, Fuck Him Up the Ass," which is a metal song. Um, and by the time "Does This Look Infected" came around, I think I was just naturally right. My writing just went heavier and darker. I used to say all the time, like I would never tell myself I want to write a certain kind of song. I just would pick up a guitar and whatever came out, came out. And it's almost like it's just what was given to me when I picked up a guitar. So those songs that started getting heavier, there was no discussion about it. There was no thought about it. So I started picking up a guitar and why am I coming up with this riff? I don't know. This is just what's being handed to me that day. Because you don't really know. I mean, a lot of writers will talk about it is that you don't really feel like it's you doing it. You feel like it kind of comes through you or it's a gift somehow. Like you just pick up a guitar and you just all of a sudden this thing comes out of it. Sometimes it's heavier, sometimes it's a ballad, sometimes it's a punk rock song. I don't really know.
What's interesting too, because in genre, like we make more about genre than it really is at its base. because you only have to do a few small changes to a song to make it like could these discs be switched in a bizarro world? Could every song on side B have been a pop punk song on side A and vice versa? Like, do you ever look at
I
it like
mean,
that?
do you mean if you change some of the chords and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's
Or
just a mood because you know it is. You don't have to exactly change the chords. You just have to play them a little bit differently, right?
I don't know. I mean, some of the stuff, like all the stuff on the pop punk side is more major chord,
Uh,
and on the other side is more minor chord. So it just inherently sounds darker. And the scales are all in a minor scale, so they're just a little bit more darker. But yeah, you could probably mix and match some of them.
yeah, white keys and black keys. That's what
Yeah.
it's an album of white keys and black keys. Do you think it like maybe you're already thinking about this? It almost sounds like you're thinking about this a little bit, but like what kind of musician do you want to be from here?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it enough yet. I mean, I'm always writing songs, and I always have, and I've always written songs that would never be some 41 songs, either whether acoustic or some of them are more sample and loop based kind of things that I've done in the past. But I don't know what path I would go down until I'm faced with, okay, this is what I'm going to put a record out. So that's when I'll find like the real passion for what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, look at like I know Joe Strummer came to mind, I guess because we're talking about punk rock, but like him finding a totally different voice with the Mescaleros, later
Yeah,
on
that was great.
and how that like I could see you doing something like that makes sense in my mind, if you were to
Mhm.
go down that road or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I listen to those records.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. Of course, now you also have to deal with the moment it's over is the moment assholes like me start going, so when's the reunion? It's
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting that every single interview still. Like, people ask now, like, so you guys gonna get back together? I'm like, we're not even broken up yet.
like REM. I'm a huge REM fan. Maybe
Uh-huh.
my favorite band. Maybe,
Okay.
it's you get an adult. That's weird, but to say my favorite. But they have to deal with it, and there was like, there's no way we're ever getting back together. There's no way. It's like that's awesome, and then they did for the Songwriters Hall of Fame one song, and it's like that's it. You got it. That's your one, and like it's so respectable because most bands never even get the chance to make that decision. So if you want
hmm
to make that decision, and then for whatever it means, forever, for now, I don't know how much you think about that part.
I'm very hyper focused on the present, a little bit to the future, and not so much of the past. But for me, this is just the only decision I felt was the right decision for me right now. I have not thought about the future too much. I just know that I just have to trust my gut at this point. Anytime I've ever failed in the past or things didn't work out the way I had hoped is when I didn't listen to myself. And I just something instinctively is telling me that this is time to do this.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, getting this book, and I do want to hit on that a little bit more. Um, One, because you've been telling these stories, and I got to point anybody to, the stories that didn't make it. A couple, it's about to come out. Fuck you, Don Henley. The amount of times, by the way, I've said "fuck you, Don Henley," because I
Yeah,
agree with you. What an incredible songwriter! What
yeah,
an incredible voice! What an
yeah.
incredible turd!
I was gonna say, what a credible asshole. I
Yeah,
know. It's funny, I didn't really know that he was known for that or like notorious dickhead, but as soon as I started telling the story, people would always say, "Oh, I hate that guy." And I'm like, I didn't really know that people hated him so much. I thought people were gonna be like, "Oh, don't pick on Don Henley. Like, why would you pick on that guy?" But it's been the opposite.
there was, and maybe you've heard this story now. There was a garage band, not son, they're just a garage band, local in the middle America, who covered an Eagles song and put it on SoundCloud, and he sued them.
Oh God,
You
that's
know,
hilarious.
it's they're covering you. They're not
Yeah.
sampling you. They're not stealing anything. They're just playing your song. That's, you know,
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, like I say in the video, it's like he's like worth ungodly amounts of money. Like uh, he should be doing other things with his life, like enjoying it.
right. But and then you've got another. I didn't see the title, so I just wrote down "White Powder and Chaos" because that's what the story seemed to be about, with the lit bus and the
Oh,
and the fake lines, and just
yeah,
the
yeah.
chaos that ensues later on that night. I mean, again, these stories, like, I would love to hear a little bit about what is in the book, because if these are the stories that didn't make the book, I can't imagine like how they top those.
Well, the thing is, the book is not just a bunch of wild stories, right? It's the whole journey. Um, so there's a lot more personal things and honest uh, things about what I was going through to make records or writing songs and stuff like that. And then there are stories that are, I mean, we went through a lot of wild stuff. So there are fun, crazy stories mixed with the whole journey of the ups and downs and what was going on in my mind through all those things.
Yeah. And you do. It is a hell of a story that we've been able to see from the outside. And of course, knowing those early days and the craziness and the chaos or whatever.
Yeah.
And eventually that had to break. I mean,
Mhm.
I think you were talking about recently, 10 years sober, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Is that the moment? Is that the moment, the big turning page moments of that part of your life and what
I
comes
don't think
after?
so. No, because the thing is, I mean, in the early days in the van, touring in the van and all that kind of stuff, there's just a lot of, we're just young and we're just crazy and wild and everything's new and there's so much chaos and everything was so encouraged back then. And it was just a bit of a different time where people weren't really like the 80s wild Motley Crue Guns N' Roses kind of lifestyle had been gone for a little while, but like people still remembered it and kind of wanted it. So when we came out and we were like championing this sort of like I don't know, this sort of lifestyle. People are like, finally, this is so great. A band that loves to party because we haven't seen that in a while. I mean, there are obviously bands that do a lot of drugs and like the whole 90s was all heroin and it was just kind of like this solo kind of
Right.
drug thing and people dying and stuff like that. It wasn't the fun, wild kind of, debauchery and decadence. So when we came onto the scene, we were like just having fun all the time, everywhere we were. And so it was very encouraged, is my point. And you can kind of get away with anything at that point. So there is like that time, but then life gets real because the album takes off and there's so much work. And we were still juggling this chaos and partying and debauchery with a ton of work. So it's I describe what that whole process is like, and then there's like the pressures of following up an album that sold millions of albums, and we put out 4 albums in 4 years. We just kept doing like the amount of pressure that was on us in those days to just quickly get another record out. Like, so I go into a lot about my mental sort of like how I did all that and what I went through to do that, and throwing in all these crazy wild stories that we kept because we kept up that same lifestyle with all the work at the same time, which is why eventually I burn out, and crash and burn.
Well, luckily you made it out the other end of that. Because the music that came out of that, I seriously mean that, is just as strong and classic and important to people's lives as those early records. And I'm so happy that you guys did. Um, and I'll also say, just as a footnote, because I doubt it's really going to be, with everything going on, Chuck turns 20 this year. Uh,
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
wow. Yeah, I guess
2004,
so.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're right. You're right. Again, I
And
don't
what a
really-
great moment even that is. It's like, amongst all of this, you've still got these anniversaries going on that will probably, hopefully be ways to be celebrated, if not by you, by the fans. But I certainly will be anyway. Deryck, seriously, congrats on everything. This record is so good. I cannot wait to dig into
Yeah.
this book and the journey that you've written about. More so, I really can't wait to see what you do with the Mescaleros next, and
Yeah.
whatever that chapter looks like.
Cool. Me too. That'll be interesting.
All right, man. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk about it. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All three of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.